Thank you for joining me today, and welcome to the Career Series of videos. This series has been put together by Washington State's Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. The idea behind this series is that we will come to you with practical tips and tricks in some very select important topics that will have a lasting impact on your career. But before we start, here's a little bit of information about me, your host, Kris Rides. I'm the CEO and founder of Tyro Security, a cybersecurity staffing and professional services firm, launched originally in 2012 out on the West Coast. I'm also an advisory board member for GRACE, that's GRC for Intelligent Ecosystems, a non-profit helping to bring diversity into our industry, UNLV, the Cyber Helpline, of course, Washington State Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, and I also lead the Industry Advisory Board for NSITE, the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre. I'm also a cybersecurity career speaker, and you'll have seen me speak at RSA, InfoSec World, ISC2's Security Congress, DEF CON, and many of the B-Sides events, including their big highlight of the year, Las Vegas. Our third topic of the career series is interviewing. In this video, we will cover the before, during, and after of the interview. After the video, some material covering common interview questions will be released, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. So here's a couple of quotes that I've always enjoyed using. First of all, Benjamin Franklin was famous for saying, "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." And the old British Army had a similar saying, which goes, "Proper preparation and planning prevents poor performance." I'm a complete believer in both of these. It's still beyond me that people work very, very hard to get an interview opportunity, and then they don't spend the time preparing for it. Preparing for an interview is crucial because it allows you to present yourself in the best possible light and demonstrate why you're the most qualified candidate for the position. By taking the time to research the company, review the job description, and practice answering common interview questions, you show the interviewer that you are serious about the opportunity and you have a genuine interest in the company. Preparation helps you feel more confident and relaxed during the interview, and it enables you to tailor your responses to highlight your relevant skills and experiences. This personalized approach can set you apart from the other candidates and leave a lasting impression on the interviewer. Thorough preparation demonstrates professionalism and attention to detail, qualities most employers value in their employees. It shows that you are committed to succeeding and are willing to go the extra mile to achieve your goals. Ultimately, preparing for an interview is a strategic investment in your future that can significantly impact your chances of landing the job. By taking the time to research, practice, and plan, you're setting yourself up for success and showing the interviewer that you are the right person for the job. Now let's jump into the key strategies. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with OSINT, or Open Source Intelligence. This is a key part of your preparation. So examples of things that you can look at before the interview to ensure that you're prepared are familiarizing yourself with the company's missions and values. They shouldn't be too hard to find, so a little bit of looking around, familiarizing yourself with their website and how it works is a great way to understand a little bit more about the company and what its plans for the future are. You should also understand their products and services. Again, when you're looking through the website, these should be things that are very evident. Companies will also have open jobs because of what they do as a business. So by understanding their business, you also understand why the company would be hiring, their risks, what they would need to protect from a cybersecurity standpoint, and show how hiring you will impact its success. You should also check out any recent news. For example, you could mention in the interview how the company's commitment to sustainability aligns with your values. You can look at their X or Twitter account. What are they posting about most recently? Have they won any awards? These are the sort of conversation points that companies love to discuss. It shows that you've done your homework, but also It shows that you're interested in them as a company, and it gives them an opportunity to be proud about the type of company they are. Of course, you want to be careful that these points stay positive. So, for example, if the stock performance isn't so great at the moment, you may not want to discuss why their stock is failing to perform. You may not want to discuss why their CEO has been called out for something in the press. Let's keep these positive and give the company an opportunity to sell to you, and by doing so, you're really selling yourself to them. Finally, you can also check out the interviewer's LinkedIn and other social media. It's really important. The more of an understanding you've got of your interviewers, the better you can do when you're answering their questions. It's always good to look out for commonality, backgrounds, things that you can talk about that will match with them. Perhaps you've done similar certifications to them. Perhaps you went to the same college. Or perhaps you know the local area they're from originally. These are all things that you can discuss, and if you can make an interview more like a conversation, you're going to find yourself being much more successful. One thing to remember though is understanding when to use this open source intelligence and understanding how it can come across if you use it at the wrong time. For instance, you could mention, I saw your post about the SolarWinds hack. I was really interested in how that came about. What do you think they could have done better? As opposed to something like, hey, I saw you took your kids to Disney this year. What was their favourite ride? Now, of course, you may be building up commonality, but it does sound a little bit creepy when you start asking people about their kids or what you've seen them up to on Instagram or Facebook. So just be very aware of that. Make sure that you review the job description. How many times have you taken a look at it? How many times have you read through it? Do you really understand the key responsibilities and requirements for the position? Feel free to print it out, make notes, highlight areas. This is a document that's going to be key for you showing how you match to what they're looking for. Now, in the actual interview itself, you want to be ready to highlight your past experience and skills that make you an excellent fit for the role. As I've already mentioned, it's important to make notes on the copy of the job description of the specific experience that's relevant in that area. So if the job requires strong communication skills, you could mention how you successfully led a team project previously and how communication was absolutely key to that success. Try and be as specific as possible. If you had to deal with communication issues between team members, how did you manage that? How did you make sure that the important parts that you needed to communicate were put across in the correct way? What different ways did you communicate? Have you got any examples of written communication that you had to use as part of that project? Make sure you bring them with you for the interview. And of course, be prepared for the parts of the job where you don't have experience. For example, if you don't have a commercial experience with a specific tool, you could mention similar tools that you have used and give evidence of how quickly you've picked up new skills previously. Interviewers rarely expect somebody that can complete 100% of what's on the job description. In fact, I would argue that somebody that can do the whole role already has no room for growth, and that's not what most companies look for. They look for people that can do the absolute essential skills. They look for people that have some experience or the ability to learn the non-essential skills, and somebody that can add value to the company as quickly as possible. I cannot emphasize enough how many of these interviewers are looking for people that can demonstrate a passion for security, a passion for that particular area that the job's in. Somebody that isn't just looking to get into that job as a step to get into the next job, but somebody that's excited and passionate about that particular role and everything that they can give to the company and that role to make themselves and the company successful. Now, of course, you absolutely should practice common interview questions. So some of the sort of interview questions that you should expect to get are the ones that you've probably had for multiple roles in the past. So from a soft skills standpoint, or maybe a more generic standpoint, you can expect questions around your background, around your resume, and you should absolutely know your resume back to front. If there's anything on your resume that you can't discuss or talk about, it shouldn't be on your resume in the first place. It's going to make people feel like perhaps you're stretching the truth. And if you lose that element of trust straight away, you may as well throw away your opportunity for this job. So other questions you should expect to hear about why you're particularly interested in that position or this company. Of course, people love to ask about strengths and weaknesses, and it's really important that you're honest about your weaknesses. Many people aren't prepared for this question, despite it being one of the most popular questions you get interviewing for any role. And they come up with very weak answers, especially around their weaknesses, and really their strengths, and they're just twisting it to make it look like a weakness. We're all human, no one's perfect, so let's think about the type of weaknesses you've got and how they fit into this role and how you've been working on those weaknesses and what opportunities you see for you to get better in those areas. You're certainly going to have questions about challenging situations and how you resolved them, handling conflicts or difficult situations, and they're going to talk about what motivates you and how you keep engaged in your work. Expect questions around prioritizing tasks and managing your time. And of course, if the role involves leadership, they may ask more generic questions about your leadership skills, where you've led previously, how big the team sizes were, those sort of things. And the other things to understand about how you adapt for change. Working in any new role involves a lot of adaptation, and so they're going to want to understand how you've dealt with that change in the past. Then, of course, there's your typical, where do you see yourself in X amount of years? I like to have a short, medium, and long-term plan, and think about how that fits within the role. If your medium or long-term plans don't fit within that company or fit within the typical career path, you may well be talking them out of offering you that role. Outside of that, the sort of technical questions you can expect for a cybersecurity role, especially an entry-level one, maybe around describing the OSI model, talking about different types of encryption. Expect to be asked things around how you stay up to date with the latest cybersecurity threats and trends. This is common. I actually had a CISO that I got on really well with, and he said to me, if it was possible for me to ask to see somebody's phone and scroll through their news feed, I'd be able to tell really quickly how passionate they really are about cybersecurity. Other typical cybersecurity questions you can get in a more entry-level role, maybe around explaining DDoS attacks, talking about different types of compliance, talking about how risk assessments are conducted. There's plenty to prepare for, and I've got a few ideas about how you can prepare for them. So if you have a friend or relative that perhaps can mock interview you, that's a great way of going through and practicing your answers and asking them, even if they're not technical, how they felt you came across. If the person that you're talking to doesn't work in cybersecurity, they'll still be able to help you with those soft skills. Of course, if you can find yourself a mentor or somebody that knows about cybersecurity that's willing to mock interview you, you're going to get a much better understanding on how you do with the more generic cybersecurity and GRC questions. Oh, and don't forget, a lot of people now use AI to mock interview them. You can upload your job description and you can ask the AI to mock interview you for that role. It's amazing how successful you can be utilizing something like that. This sort of preparation will help you feel more confident and you'll be more articulate during the interview. Now you've practiced the common interview questions that you'll get, it's time to prepare some questions of your own for the interviewer. This is really important. Making sure that you've got great questions shows your interest in the company and the interviewer. The sort of things you can ask about are the role, the team dynamics, the company culture, professional development, and of course, asking the interviewer about their experience. But more about that in a second. So when you're asking about the role, you should have the job description with you. A question I really like is asking around what a typical day for somebody in this position would look like. You can ask about who you'll be working quite closely with. You can certainly ask about the team. So when we talk about team dynamics, who else is in the team? How big is the team? What are the other roles of the people within the team? And how do they work together? When it comes to company culture, understanding what's important for them as a company and how they typically work is going to be important for you and for the interviewer. An interview is a great opportunity not only for the interviewer and the company to see if you're a fit, but for you to make sure that they're also a fit for you. Asking about professional development shows that as a person, you're always trying to improve. So understanding, do they offer any professional development opportunities? Do people get the opportunity to go to conferences? How about taking new certifications? What sort of professional development interests are they looking for in their new employees? And as I mentioned, we should always ask the interviewer about their experience. Because at the end of the day, people love to talk about themselves. All of these questions are designed to create a conversation. So if you're going to ask somebody about how long they've been with the company, you can ask them about what made them join the company in the first place. You can ask them about what makes them stay with the company when somebody like themselves are probably in high demand from other companies. You could ask around what they most enjoy about working there and what their biggest challenges are. Why not ask what kind of challenges you should expect as somebody new coming into the company and how you could prepare best for those challenges? And my big final important question that I encourage all of our candidates that are interviewing to ask is if the interviewer has any concerns around their ability to perform the role. This gives you an opportunity to cover any areas perhaps you haven't already covered. And the last thing you want to do is walk away from an interview realizing that when you get the feedback, you actually had experience that you could have discussed that wasn't brought up during that interview. When I talk about things like dressing for success, some people view this as a little bit of an old school mindset. But I'm a big believer that you only have one opportunity to make a first impression. And part of that first impression may well be what you look like. So whether this is an in-person or a video interview, I like to make sure that I dress and am prepared for that interview. Heck, for me personally, I even like to make an effort for a telephone interview. This might be a little strange for some, but I think dressing smart for a telephone interview puts you in the right mindset and ensures you approach the interview with a professional attitude. When you're dressed professionally, you're much more likely to feel confident and you're much more likely to project a positive image, even if the interviewer can't see you. Of course, this can help you present yourself in a more professional manner. It may enable you to speak more clearly and more confidently. And ultimately, you're going to make a better impression on the interviewer. Not only that, but when you dress smart, it helps you mentally prepare for the interview. And although I don't have a psychology background, I certainly think that people that prepare for this generally take it more seriously, and ultimately it increases their chances of success. When it comes to choosing how you wish to dress for an interview, I always like people to think about the company culture. My tip is, whatever you think the culture is, then you may want to go for a level smarter than you think you would need to be in the office. So for example, if most of the pictures of people you can see are in t-shirts and jeans, personally, I'd like to still make an effort with a shirt and trousers. Make sure your outfit is professional, clean, pressed, and fits well. It's this kind of attention to detail that demonstrates your professionalism and a respect for the interview process, as well as for the company and the interviewer. Personally, as an interviewer, I would always dress a little bit more professionally than I typically would in the office when I was interviewing somebody. I'm not sure who this quote's attributed to, but dress for the job you want, not the job you have, is a quote that I love when it comes to dressing for success for interviews. Make sure you're always ready early for an interview. If it's an on-site interview, I always plan to be at least 10 or 15 minutes early. For example, if it's physical, the parking may be confusing or getting you signed in might take some time. For a virtual interview, I like to be at my desk and ensure I'm logged in, camera working, microphone working. I don't want to have to troubleshoot these things when I'm supposed to be in the actual interview. As well as ensuring that your video and microphone are working, you also want to make sure that you've got everything you need around you. pen and paper, something to take notes with, maybe your questions that you have prepared, everything you need to make sure you can do your best in this interview opportunity. Finally, you want to make sure that your room is well lit. Unfortunately, it's becoming more common for people to interview on behalf of others, and so companies will terminate the interview if they have a feeling something isn't right. So, for instance, if they can't see your face properly, there's a worry that perhaps you're interviewing on somebody else's behalf. Even recently, there was an interview that showed somebody using an AI tool to actually superimpose a different face on top of the person that was interviewing. Thankfully, the interviewer noticed this and asked them to do several things which the person refused to, and then they terminated the interview early. So overall, making sure that you're ready early will give you plenty of time to compose yourself, re-review your notes, have a read through your own resume, and show your punctuality and your reliability. You'll want to make sure that you've got everything you need on hand. So for a virtual interview, the sort of things that I'd expect you to have is a copy of the resume that you sent them, and ensure that you know it from back to front. And the reason why I say the copy that you sent them is because I understand many candidates will have different resumes for different roles, and so it's so important that you've got the right one in front of you. You'll also want to make sure you've got your notes with all the questions that you wish to ask, a copy of the job description, again with areas highlighted and any of your notes and questions written on it. Of course, something to take notes on. If you're using your computer or your phone, a big tip from me is to make sure you let your interview know what you're doing, so they don't think you're checking your emails or you're not focused on the actual interview itself. And finally, don't forget to put on your do not disturb. Personally, I like to recommend that your phone is on airplane mode. That way, you're not going to get any annoying alerts or anything that will disturb the flow of the interview. For an in-person interview, you should have the following: extra copies of your resume. You never know when they won't have one to hand, or perhaps when extra people may join your interview. You might want to take any written references you can, any copies of relevant certificates, education, or any of your portfolio materials. You can absolutely bring your prepared questions with you. Why wouldn't you? All this does is show the interviewer exactly how prepared you are for this interview. A demonstration of your preparation shows how much you're interested in the role. And again, don't forget to put that do not disturb mode on. I always put the airplane mode on, as I mentioned. The reason behind that is many of us will have people that can break our do not disturb mode. If I'm on a live webinar, the last thing I'll want is my wife to call me, break the do not disturb mode, just to give me something extra on my honey-do list. Something that many people don't do is practicing their active listening. We talked about mock interviews early on in this video. These mock interviews really enable you to practice your active listening. If you're able to turn an interview into a conversation, as we talked about earlier, you're much more likely to be successful. It's important that you carefully listen to the questions, and as you're listening to those questions, have a think about what the obvious next question is. That's the whole idea of a conversation. You should have everything around you to be able to make notes, including the extra questions that you want to ask. While people are talking, it's easy to forget the next question that you wanted to ask, and you want to be careful of not interrupting people. The key is to provide very thoughtful responses, and if you have to take a little bit more time to have a think before you respond, then that's completely okay. Active listening shows that you're engaged in the conversation, and you can effectively communicate your ideas, something that all interviewers are looking for. Now this here is the gold. You absolutely need to make sure that you follow up after the interview. During the interview, make sure you take down everyone's names and ensure you know how to spell them. You can also ask them if it's okay for you to connect with them on LinkedIn. Don't be afraid to ask for a business card or their email to send a thank you. And then you absolutely need to ensure that you do it. Sometimes this info is available in the invite email. You'll be able to see who else was invited, and their whole email address is often in there. You can use these email addresses and the names that are in there to do your OSINT as we mentioned in the very first slide of this video. A thank you letter demonstrates your professionalism and your continued interest in the position. I've been in recruitment for 25 years, and I've seen thank you letters that have impacted the decisions that companies make and interviewers make on who they want to hire. When things come down to just 2 candidates, it can be the smallest of differences that will actually get you the job. On the next slide, I'm going to give you an example of a thank you letter. Now, the advice with this sort of thing, as well as thanking them for taking the time to meet with you, you want to make sure you don't wait too long to send it. So I would send it perhaps the same day I interview, or if it was late in the day, maybe the following day. Make sure you tell them about how you enjoyed the conversation and make sure you've got the correct job title for the position. You can talk about the role being rewarding, maybe even mention some of the things that you discussed in the interview to make sure that they don't feel that this is a template that you're sending to everybody with exactly the same information in it. In the example, I talk about how your degree, master's, experience in cybersecurity would make you an excellent candidate. You can replace this with anything that you actually discussed in the interview. That will make it a lot more specific. And then finally, make sure that they feel that they're okay to reach out to you if they have any other questions, or if they want a copy of the references you have to say what a great employee you will make. Every interview is an opportunity to learn and get better at your interviewing technique. So few people I know actually do this. It's easy to get down when you don't get a job after you think you've performed very well during an interview, especially when you've had to work so hard to even get that interview opportunity. That's why it's really important that you take some time to reflect on your performance. You want to identify the areas for improvement and don't be scared to ask for feedback. Of course, many companies won't give you detailed feedback, but that's why one of the most important questions I gave you to ask is while you're in the interview. Ask them for what you could do better. Ask them if they have any doubts about your ability or things that you could improve to make sure that you're ready to take this sort of role. That way, when you leave an interview, you already have a little bit more of a realistic feel as to how you've done. So remember, regardless of whether you get the role or not, you can continuously improve your skill set. Personal and professional development are traits that hiring companies prize in their employees. So take the time and consider what went well and what you could do differently in future interviews to enhance your chances of success. I'd like to thank you all for joining me today on this career series video. If you want to find out more about me, of course you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I also host the Route to CISO podcast, which is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also as a video on YouTube. This is a great way to find out more about CISOs that actually hire and their personal careers. And so I'd recommend the time it takes to watch through those and perhaps even connect with those CISOs and let them know that you found their career story interesting. Finally, I want to thank you all for joining me today on this Cybersecurity Career Series video. I also want to thank the Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence for Washington State for taking the time to put this series of videos together. Thank you all, and please do connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know how you found the advice.